welcome to the In His Voice podcast, hosted by me, Rob L. Lowe, where we talk about those things that deeply impact the lives of boys and men without ever bashing women. We talk about everything from the bedroom to the boardroom, from the playground to the stadium, and everything in between. And today's show, nothing different. So we're well into season 4. And if you're watching this, please do me a favor. Make sure you go hit that like and subscribe button. Subscribe to the channel, share with your friends. Go check out some of the podcast episodes from season 1, 2, and 3. I think you'll find them to be very engaging. And again, one thing I like to emphasize on this show is no matter what we talk about, we don't bash women. We don't. I don't believe in it. I don't subscribe to it. But I do believe in holding men and women accountable for our actions. And that happens through dialogue and transparency. So today's conversation, man, is it harder for men to raise a daughter or a son? Think about that. For men, is it harder to raise a son or a daughter? So this is where this conversation came up for me. I was talking to someone recently and they asked me if I had any sons or how many kids that I had. I said I had 2 daughters and I wanted girls. My wife wanted a boy and she wanted at least one son, maybe 2 sons. And I didn't want sons. I didn't. And I didn't understand why she wanted sons, but I'm sure she didn't understand why I didn't. Because many men, pride themselves on having a son because the son will carry on their last name. Where the thought is the daughter will get married and take on her husband's last name and then your legacy ends. I think that's where it comes from. But I think there's a couple things that play for me that didn't really impact me like that. I have 2 older sisters and no brothers, and I didn't really like my last name my whole life anyway. It was my father's last name, and I was actually mad that my mother didn't give me her last name, which is my grandparents' last name, which is my family's last name. So my older sister, she has the last name Jenkins. My middle sister and me had the last name Lowe, but my middle sister got married, and now she has a different last name, and I'm the only one stuck with my biological father's last name. So I didn't like it. I still don't like it, but that's just a whole different story. But because of my childhood, because of the experience that I had, because I didn't think I would live past the age of 30, I thought if I would have a son, I would be too hard on him. I know I would have been. Because what I saw was the pressure, the challenges that society placed on a young black man. And so as I was saying, for me having a son, I didn't want to pass on the trauma of my childhood. And I didn't want to put the pressure of the expectation of who he had to be as a man because of my own experiences. I also think there was a part of me that wanted daughters because I wanted to pour back into women. And because I didn't have a mom, that ideal, and because I felt like my sisters, man, missed out on so many things, that having a daughter would allow me to redeem myself in some way in life for maybe the neglect that I had towards other women earlier in life, or maybe the things that I saw my sisters have to experience that I just wanted to protect them from. And I just felt like, more importantly, I think I felt like a daughter's love towards her father would be unconditional. And I think that's what I was searching for more than anything. And that a son's love stereotypically is They love their father, but their mother, a love towards their mother, you can't describe. A mother and a son's love is amazing. Now, the reality in my family, my wife has that bond with her daughters. Like, they're daddy's girls, yeah, but nothing like compared to what they are with her. Like, nothing, not even close. But they truly have made me a better person because they forced me to see the world very differently, which helped me become a better man. So as they grew and evolved and moved into womanhood, I also had to grow and evolve in how I interacted with them and how I talked to them and what expectations I set for them and how I supported their choices and their viewpoints. So it goes back to the topic of, is it harder to raise a girl versus a boy if you're a man? So let's dissect that. I personally think it's harder to raise a girl. I think it would be harder to raise a daughter than it is to raise a boy if you're a man. I think one, because there's this piece that is hard for us to relate to, which is the emotional standpoint from which most women operate. And I don't mean that as emotional and moody, and that I mean just generally our nature is we are problem solvers and we're not often good listeners. And I think raising daughters or having daughters require you to be a better listener in many cases than a better problem solver. And so for men who don't understand that, trying to connect with daughters can be hard. I remember my daughters, like at different phases, they're 15 months apart. But when the oldest was in high school, man, I thought she hated me. And I couldn't understand why. It hurt so much. And I talked to my wife about it. And my youngest daughter would ask her, like, why are you so mean to dad? But then my oldest daughter went to college and came back, like she was a different person towards me. And then my youngest daughter became distant. And I never understood. I was like, as a father, you want to give them everything you didn't have. My downfall is because of my career and my ability and my desire to want to give them, I was gone a lot. I was traveling, or I lived in a different city because my job took me there and I didn't want to move them. And so I probably missed out on a lot of opportunities to nurture with them. But I think there are a couple things that men have to think about. That when it comes to raising daughters versus raising boys. Here's some things to think about, okay? Things to consider. Here's some few reasons why raising a daughter might be harder. Different lived experiences. Fathers may struggle to relate to certain aspects of a girl's upbringing, such as puberty, body images, or social pressures on women. I just talked about that. Emotional communication. Most girls tend to express emotions more openly, while some men have been raised with less emphasis on emotional expression, making deeper conversations more challenging. Protective insights. This is big for me. Fathers often feel a strong urge to protect their daughters, particularly when it comes to relationships and safety concerns. We can sometimes lead to overprotectives. I'm going to pause right there. That's a big one. Because as a boy, we're taught that, yes, protect yourself. But if someone pick a fight, you need to go fight them back. As a father, if I had a son, I would say, look, if someone mess with you, I need you to go fight them back. But if I think there's no way they can win, it's going to cause them harm, there's no way I wouldn't do that. I would do that. But I think instinctively as a father, like, no, they hit you, you hit them back. But with my daughters, I don't want nobody to put their hands on my daughter. And if someone did, I want my daughters to walk away because I don't want anybody to hurt them. My daughters are small. And I think I would have a double standard, or I do have a double standard, that I would not want someone to hurt my daughters. Whereas my son, I would have an expectation, like, I don't want anybody to hurt you, but you got to stand up for yourself. And probably the reality is my daughters will have to stand up for themselves too. But my first instinct would be, no, I'm gonna fight that battle. I can't fight a kid, but I'm gonna call their parents. I'm gonna do whatever it takes. I'm gonna do all that. But I don't know if I would handle my son the same way if I faced with the same scenario. Something else. Navigating social pressures. Daughters often face unique societal expectations around beauty, behavior, and career choices, and fathers might struggle to guide them through these pressures effectively. Boy, let's go here. Let me tell you something, my daughters, I never understood. To this day, I don't even understand. My daughters, to me, are beautiful, just naturally beautiful. Because I'm biracial, I inherited somewhat good hair. And they inherit it too, right? So they have a texture of hair that can curl up. They can do some things with it. My oldest daughter cut her hair off voluntarily multiple times. And I was shocked. I was like, why would you cut your hair off? You got this beautiful hair, this soft hair. You can do things with it that other people maybe wish they could. And she told me, Dad, my hair does not define me. Now, I wouldn't have had an issue if my son cut his hair. But my daughter, oh my God, because I associated her beauty with her hair being long. And that's a double standard. That's unfair. And then I struggled because the first time either one of them got braids, I was mad. Like, why would you go get braids? Why? Because I equated braids to someone who didn't want to take care of their hair or who had short hair or who didn't have good hair. And what they helped me to understand is like braids was just a way of them to manage their hair easily so they didn't have to do it all the time. But I was like, but you got this beautiful hair. With the son, I'd have just said, get your hair cut. Get a fade, do whatever. I would have just told my son, though, don't come here with your hair looking a hot mess. You can't come in here with the style of hair that Miami folks wear in Orlando or Jay-Z. You can't do that in my house. I'm sorry. That's where I would have drew the line. But I think I'd have been okay with my daughters coming home with dreads, right? Or the braids. Double standard, not saying it's fair. But that thing around beauty and pressures, my daughters, felt the need to wear form-fitting clothes when they got older, right? They were growing. They were going into puberty. They were young women. I didn't understand that. I was like, why you got to wear that, right? Hindsight 2020, it wasn't anything inappropriate. I just didn't like the fact that they were highlighting they were young women now because those are my daughters. As a son, as a father of a son, I'm just going to say, your pants can't be sagging. But I wouldn't think about like, oh, you're highlighting too much of your masculinity. Now, I'm not going to let a son walk out the house with some pants on that are too tight where everybody can see his goods. I'm not doing that either. But I don't think I'd have been as critical of raising a son as I would as a daughter about what she wore when she got out the house. And then last but not least is personal comfort levels. Some fathers may feel awkward discussing topics like menstruation, dating, body image, which are important to girls. Listen, that one right there. I can tell you, having two daughters, having a wife, having two sisters, and I'm the youngest of my siblings. I was fortunate enough to get over that part early in life. Because when my sisters were teenagers, when they were 13 and 14 and going through puberty or 11 to 12, whatever the age was, I was the one who had to go to the store and buy the tampons when they couldn't. I was the one that my grandparents would send and run up there because they were out and they were in the bathroom and needed me to hurry up and come back. I had to do that. And so when it came time to go get stuff for my daughters or even my wife, I ain't think nothing about it. I wish somebody would say something to me. I would literally go and ask the attendants for help. Tell me, is this the right kind? Is this heavy? Is this light? Is this full protection? Is this nighttime? Because I care really, really about making sure they were safe and they felt good and they weren't insecure and there were things that were out of my control, but I wanted to do the best that I could as a father to protect them, which instinctively is what happens when you're the father of girls. My daughters don't talk to me about dating. They absolutely don't. They talk to my wife all day, but they don't talk to me about dating. I think if I had a son, he'd probably talk to me about dating more so than he would with his mom. And that might be the only advantage I have is the bond. And don't get me wrong, I would have the same expectation of my son that I would of a daughter. I would. There would not be a double standard where I'd be telling my son that he could go out and do whatever he want, even if he wore a condom. Like, no, respect yourself. Things happen, slips up. You get caught up in the moment. The same things apply to my daughter. I gave my daughters advice when they went to college. I was like, look, you got a right to live your life. Just make sure whatever decision you make, you're going to live with, and don't put too much emphasis on sex. Just because a guy waits does not mean he cared for you any more than he did if you did it the first night, just so you know. It's just a game. And so if that's what you want to do, you can do it. It does not take away from the woman you are, but you have to be willing to live with the consequences. And I would tell my son the same thing. The decisions you make have consequences. The people you hang out with have consequences. I think the biggest fear I would have with raising a son, and this is real, is what I do know about men. We instinctively size each other up. Instinctively. And I would just be afraid that society's pressures, just being a black man, and all the negative energy that we grow up with in the trauma, I would be so concerned about violence or negativity coming towards him because I would raise him to not be that. I don't so much worry about that with my daughters, but with a son, because he would be different, I would worry that negativity. And I would definitely highly encourage books and education, and those are things that happen a lot in our community, but they're not talked about. And he'd have to respect women. Like, absolutely, you can't bring home different girlfriends every day. I wouldn't be doing that. And so while there's differences, I think for men who have daughters, if we're honest and we really are engaged fathers, we learn a lot from them. For those that have sons, I can't speak for it because I don't have one, but I'm sure you learn a lot too. But something about having a daughter, if you're a man, it teaches you things you never knew about yourself. Some things make you better. Some things make you have eye-opening experiences. There's probably things that you could share with a girl as a father that her mother can't, because you're a man. You can see what her mother can't see. And I would just say this in closing. If you are a father and you have daughters, I've said this on other podcasts, man, you have a responsibility. You have to take it seriously, because how you treat her, how you treat her mom, whether you're with her or not, how you show up will ultimately affect who she lets in her life. And if you care anything for her, set an example. Set an example for your son, but set an example for your daughter. Remember this. A son helps to create life, but he can't carry it. Just remember that. He helps to create it, but he can't carry it. Only a daughter can do that. That's why they're special. That's why they're unique. And that's why they deserve men who really are a part of their lives and pour into them. So my daughters, if you're watching this, Janae and Trinity, you are my world. I didn't always get it right, but you have to know, man, every day I woke up, I was motivated by making sure I did the best thing that I could do that day to be a better father than I was the day before. I hope you see this and share this with your family and friends. For everyone else, I hope you got something out of the podcast. This is a more serious one, but I told you I'm going to touch on those subjects in season 4 that normally I don't talk about. But stay tuned. We have other episodes coming up, some more engaging stuff. We're going to have some crazy topics in the future. We're going to talk about, you ready? Does size matter? Yep, I'm going to talk about it. Does size matter? I'm actually going to have a podcast on penis sizes. So stay tuned. I look forward to talking with you. Take care. And I'll see you on the next episode of the In His Voice podcast. God bless.